I told you not to call him. Do you hear me? The sharp voice pierced the still air, bouncing off the marble walls of the Pierce estate like a blade slicing silk. Nathan Pierce paused mid-step inside the grand foyer, the soft click of his leather shoes swallowed by the echoing shout. The late afternoon sun filtered through tall curtains, casting golden bars across the polished floor. In one hand he held a handmade Italian teddy bear, the gift he'd brought home for his daughter. But his smile faded. A scream high fragile, not playful, not teasing, real. Nathan dropped the suitcase without a second thought and ran up the curved staircase, each step louder than the last. He didn't call out. He followed the sound. Then he heard it soft, broken. I just wanted to call Daddy. He reached her door. It was ajar. He pushed it open. Ava was curled near the edge of her bed, her knees tucked to her chest, her hair a tangled halo of tight coils damp with sweat and tears. Clutched in her small hands was a worn, plush rabbit. In front of her stood Eleanor, the housekeeper, who'd been with the Pierces for nearly 20 years, arms crossed, face flushed with fury. You don't belong here, you know that? Eleanor sneered. This isn't a place for children like you. Black kids don't live in houses like this, not unless they're cleaning it. Ava whimpered. Eleanor stepped closer. You think you're his daughter? He doesn't love you. You're a project, Ava, a little charity case to make him look noble. Soon enough, he'll get tired of pretending. Nathan froze. For half a second, the world spun off its axis. Then he stepped inside. Eleanor turned, startled. Her face went pale. Mr. Pierce, I didn't know you were... What are you doing? Nathan's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It sliced through the tension like cold steel. She yelled at me. Eleanor stammered. I was only trying to discipline. Nathan's eyes didn't leave hers. That child is my daughter. Eleanor's mouth opened, but no sound came. He crossed the room in 2 strides and knelt by Ava. Her eyes met his wide, red pleading. When he wrapped his arms around her, she clung to him like she was afraid he might disappear. Daddy, I'm here, baby. I'm here now. He didn't look up at Eleanor. He didn't need to. His voice was steady. Leave this house right now. But Mr. Pierce, I said now. He reached over and pressed the intercom. Gavin, come upstairs to Ava's room. Escort Eleanor off the property immediately. No conversation. Gavin responded within seconds. As Eleanor left, head low, not a word more was spoken. Her footsteps vanished down the hall. Nathan stayed where he was. Ava curled into his chest, her small body shaking. I didn't mean to make her mad, she whispered. She said I didn't belong, that you'd send me back. The words tore at him. He looked around the room. Plush toys, designer furniture, a private bathroom, a shelf of books from around the world, and yet none of it had made her feel safe. He held her tighter. Ava, he said softly. I chose you. I didn't adopt you to look good in a photo. I adopted you because you are my daughter. No one gets to tell you different. If your heart ached, or you felt a connection with Ava, hit that like button to show you're listening to the voices that need to be heard, and don't forget to comment where you're watching from. You might be surprised to find someone nearby watching this very moment with you. But I'm not like everyone else here, she murmured. He gently lifted her chin. That's right. You're stronger, braver, and more loved than anyone in this house ever imagined. She didn't speak again. She only nodded, barely. Nathan sat there long after the sun dipped below the horizon. He listened to her breathing slow, watched her finally close her eyes. Outside the window, the sky faded to deep blue. Inside, a father sat beside his daughter, silent, but certain, knowing in his bones that justice would not come from silence, that from this moment on, love would not be distant or delayed. Tonight, he would begin to make things right, not with power, but with presence. Nathan didn't sleep that night. He sat in the leather chair beside Ava's bed, one hand resting gently on her back as she slept. Every few minutes, her breath would catch like she was fighting a memory in her dreams. And each time, Nathan would whisper, "You're safe, baby. Daddy's right here." At dawn, when the soft amber glow crept through the curtains, he finally stood. His joints ached, his shirt was wrinkled, and his eyes were bloodshot. But none of it mattered. What mattered was the quiet rise and fall of Ava's chest, finally steady. He made his way downstairs, his mind still reeling from the night before. He replayed Eleanor's words over and over. "You don't belong here. Black kids don't live in houses like this." Nathan had built this home, every inch of it a testament to his rise from nothing. Born in South Central LA, orphaned at 9, shuffled between relatives until he was 16, then alone. He worked 3 jobs through college, started a tech logistics firm from his garage, and built it into a multi-billion-dollar corporation. He knew struggle. He knew survival. But somehow, despite all he'd overcome, he had failed to protect the one soul who needed him most. In the kitchen, the house was still. He opened the fridge, pulled out eggs and turkey bacon, and began cooking, moving with muscle memory. The smell filled the room. Coffee brewed on the side. He didn't cook often anymore, but today wasn't about habit. It was about presence. Footsteps behind him. Light, hesitant. "Morning, Daddy." He turned. Ava stood in the doorway, still in her pajamas, clutching the teddy bear he'd brought from Italy. "Morning, sunshine." He smiled soft and open. "You hungry?" She nodded, rubbing one eye. He lifted her gently onto one of the stools at the kitchen island and set a plate in front of her. She looked at the food for a long time before picking up her fork. After a few bites, she asked, "Is she gone?" "Yes," Nathan said. "Eleanor won't be coming back. She said this house doesn't want people like me." Nathan set down his coffee and knelt beside her stool, looking up at her. "Listen to me, Ava. That house, this home, belongs to you as much as it belongs to me. Your skin, your curls, your voice, everything about you belongs here. You are not a guest. You are family." She didn't respond, but her lip trembled. She reached out and hugged his neck tight. Later that morning, Nathan sat in his study with his assistant, Simon. "She's been with us for almost 2 decades, Simon said, stunned. "You sure about this?" "She emotionally abused my daughter," Nathan replied. "I don't care if she worked for me 20 years or 20 hours. She's done. We'll handle the severance." Quietly, Nathan nodded. "No press, no drama. But I want full access to the staff records. Every complaint, every schedule. Start with the past 6 months." Simon scribbled notes. "You think this was a pattern? I think I've been blind," Nathan murmured. That evening, Nathan did something he hadn't done in over a year. He canceled all his meetings for the week. Instead, he picked Ava up from school himself. The moment she saw him standing by the school gate, her backpack hanging loosely and her curls bouncing, her whole face lit up. "You came." "Of course I did," he said, taking her hand. They stopped for ice cream on the way home. Chocolate swirl with rainbow sprinkles for her, plain vanilla for him. He listened as she talked about art class, about how Mrs. Chen let them paint with their fingers that day. He laughed when she imitated her classmate Leo's funny voice. At one point, she paused and asked, "Do you have to go away again soon?" Not for a while, Nathan said. She looked relieved. That night, as he tucked her into bed, Ava looked up at him and asked, "What's going to happen to the other people who work here? What do you mean? Do they think like her?" Eleanor, Nathan sat on the edge of the bed, serious now. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out. I don't want anyone to be mean again. I promise. I'll make sure this is a kind house. That's my job to protect you." She smiled sleepily, her small fingers curling around his. "Okay, Night Daddy. Love you." He stayed until she drifted off. Back in his study, Nathan poured himself a glass of bourbon, the weight of the day finally settling. On the bookshelf behind him were photos, ribbon cuttings, interviews, awards. One picture caught his eye, a snapshot from the day he brought Ava home. She had been 5 then. Her arms clung to him like ivy, face pressed into his shoulder. He hadn't understood it at the time. He thought she was just nervous. Now he saw it differently. It was the grip of a child, afraid the world would vanish beneath her feet. He picked up the photo and stared at it, whispering, "Not again." Then he set it down, picked up his phone, and called his private security chief. "Ken, I want an internal sweep discreet. Everyone in the household staff, past and present. I want to know who's here for the right reasons." Ken didn't ask why. He simply replied, "Understood, sir." And Nathan leaned back in his chair, eyes on the ceiling, as the night swallowed the house once more. But this time the silence wasn't empty. It was the breath before the reckoning. Nathan stood at the window of his home office, hands folded behind his back, watching the sun stretch its fingers across the backyard. Ava's laughter echoed faintly from the garden below. She was chasing bubbles, their rainbow shimmer drifting skyward in the morning air. He watched her for a long time, the rhythm of her joy both soothing and humbling. Just days ago, that same child had trembled beneath a torrent of hate in her own bedroom. His phone buzzed on the desk behind him. A message from Ken's security review complete. 3 flagged staff members. Report and footage attached. Nathan opened the file jaw, tightening as he read. 3 employees, all long-term, had complaints lodged against them. Subtle things. One had repeatedly referred to Ava as the rescue pup. Another had redirected birthday gifts from vendors meant for Ava to the general donation pile. The third, more recently, had accidentally lost Ava's school drawings twice. None of these offenses were large enough to draw legal action, but they weren't small in the heart of a child. Nathan felt the quiet flame of fury ignite again, low and steady. There was a rot here, not loud, not violent, just persistent like mildew in the walls, hard to notice until the damage was deep. He didn't call a meeting. He didn't make a scene. Instead, he wrote 3 letters. Personal direct firm, but restrained. Each one informed the recipient that their services were no longer required. Each one included full severance. He handed them to Simon without ceremony. "Deliver them before noon," he said. "Escort them off the grounds." Quietly. Simon nodded. "And replacements?" "I'll review new candidates myself," Nathan replied. "We don't just need employees, we need guardians." That afternoon, he picked Ava up from school again. She climbed into the back seat, clutching a messy paper crown on her head. "I'm Queen Ava today," she declared with a grin. Nathan smiled in the rearview mirror. "Your Majesty, where to?" She giggled. "Home, please." They talked on the way back. Nothing heavy. Nathan didn't bring up Eleanor or the staff. He wanted Ava's days filled with more than cleanup from adult mistakes. He wanted her to live forward, not backward. After dinner, Ava asked if she could draw in his office while he worked. He set her up at the low table near the window. She hummed to herself as she colored tiny feet swinging under her chair. At one point, she looked up and asked Daddy, "Did you have a dad?" Nathan paused, pen in hand. "No," he said quietly. "Not one who stayed." "Then how do you know how to be one?" He turned to her, smiling. "Because I know what it feels like not to have one." She blinked, then nodded. That makes sense, and just like that, she returned to her drawing. Later that night, after she went to bed, Nathan walked the halls of his home slowly, room by room, noticing things he hadn't in years. A faded photo of him shaking hands with a senator, a dusty award for philanthropic leadership, a trophy case with plaques bearing his name, but no trace of Ava, no finger painting, no kindergarten diploma, no framed art. How had he missed that? This house was built to impress, but not to hold memory. He picked up a frame and set it aside. The next day, he called a decorator. "I want to redesign the house," he said. "Not the bones, just the soul. Family photos, her artwork, soft colors, things that feel like home." The decorator, confused at first, eventually understood, and she nodded with a gentle smile. "Mr. Pierce, it'll feel like she grew up here by the time we're done." The transformation began slowly, one room at a time. Ava noticed within days. "You hung my painting?" she asked, pointing to the messy watercolor above the fireplace. "It's a masterpiece," Nathan said. By the end of the week, there were toys in the living room, a reading nook in the corner, and Ava's name etched onto a wooden growth chart near the pantry. "This house looks different," Ava whispered one evening. "It's catching up to you," Nathan said. "You've been changing it without even trying." Ava tilted her head. "Do houses have hearts only when the right people live in them?" She smiled and climbed into his lap. Outside, the sky darkened. The first stars appeared. Inside, for the first time in a long time, Nathan felt like he wasn't managing a mansion, he was guarding a home. And he knew deep in his bones that whatever came next, they'd face it together. Because Ava wasn't just part of his life now. She was the center of it. It was a rainy Wednesday when Nathan first noticed something odd tucked beneath Ava's pillow. He had come upstairs early carrying a mug of warm chamomile tea and one of her favorite bedtime books. Ava was brushing her teeth in the adjoining bathroom, humming to herself, a soft tune she often made up on the spot. The bathroom light spilled across the carpet in a narrow golden strip. As he smoothed out her comforter and fluffed her pillow, a folded piece of paper slipped to the floor. At first, Nathan assumed it was a drawing. Ava often sketched animals and imagined castles when she was bored, but as he bent down and opened the small, crumpled sheet, his heart clenched. It wasn't a drawing. It was a list, written in uneven, childlike scrawl, with her favorite purple marker, things I must not do. 1. Talk too loud. 2. Touch the walls. 3. Ask too many questions. 4. Eat the last cookie. 5. Call Daddy when he's away. 6. Cry. Below the list in smaller letters she had written, "If I break these, she might come back and Daddy might leave." Nathan didn't hear the toothbrush shut off, didn't hear the small footsteps returning. He was still staring at the paper when Ava stepped into the room. She froze in the doorway. "You weren't supposed to find that." He looked up slowly. "Ava, where did you learn these rules?" Her eyes darted down. She twisted her hands together. "She made me say them. Every day, before school." Eleanor. Her venom had run deeper than he'd known. Nathan moved to kneel in front of his daughter, gently placing the list on the nightstand. "Sweetheart, those rules aren't real. They're not yours to carry. None of them. But I don't want her to come back," she whispered, "or for you to go away." His voice cracked. "I will never ever leave you, not for noise, not for questions, not for any mistake. You're my daughter Ava, and you don't have to earn that love. It's yours just because you exist." She was quiet for a long time, then said softly, "That's not what she said." Nathan's breath hitched. He pulled her close, wrapping her in his arms. "She was wrong," he said, kissing the top of her head. "She was terribly wrong." That night, after Ava had fallen asleep this time, curled in his arms like a baby bird, Nathan sat awake, staring at that purple list. His mind burned. The next morning, he called Simon into his office. "I need a therapist," Nathan said bluntly. "Someone good with children. Someone Ava can trust." Simon raised an eyebrow. "You want in-house therapy?" "Yes. Someone who can come here. Twice a week. I don't want her to walk into a cold office and feel like something's wrong with her. I'll put out the call." Nathan hesitated. "And make sure it's someone who understands what it means to grow up black in a world that doesn't always see your worth." Simon gave a quiet nod. "I know just who to start with." By the end of the week, Dr. Evelyn Reed arrived. She was in her 60s, with silver-streaked dreadlocks, and a voice that wrapped around you like a warm blanket. A retired child psychologist from the VA, she had spent decades helping children of trauma find their footing. Her first meeting with Ava was over tea and cookies at the kitchen table. No clipboards, no questions, just stories. About the time she'd fallen out of a tree as a girl, about her dog named Roosevelt, who used to bark at squirrels but never chased them. Ava laughed. Not loud, not long, but it was real. By their third session, Ava drew a picture of a lion cub sitting next to a man in a suit. "That's me," she said, "and Daddy. He's the one with the big hands." When Dr. Reed asked about the lion's face, Ava said, "He looks scared, but he's strong anyway." Later that night, Nathan sat in the living room with Dr. Reed after Ava had gone to bed. "She's healing," Evelyn said, "but she's still carrying fear. Fear she doesn't know how to name yet." Nathan looked into his untouched cup of coffee. "And me," Evelyn smiled gently. "You're carrying guilt. That's a different kind of burden, and if you don't name it, she'll think she caused it." That hit him harder than he expected. He walked upstairs and peeked into Ava's room. She was asleep, breathing even her lion drawing on the bedside table. He sat beside her for a moment, brushing a curl from her forehead. In that quiet, he made a promise not in words, but in presence. He would not only be the man who built her a safer home, he would be the man who stayed. And little by little, they would both learn how to feel safe again. Together, Nathan stood in front of the hallway closet outside Ava's room, his hand lingering on the brass doorknob. It had been weeks since Eleanor left, weeks since Ava had begun therapy with Dr. Reed. The house was quieter now, but not hollow, just calm. Still, there were parts of it Nathan hadn't touched, corners that held more than dust. And this closet, this space right outside Ava's sanctuary, felt like one of them. He opened it slowly. Inside were cleaning supplies, old linens, a few storage bins. At first glance, nothing unusual, but something tugged at Nathan's instincts. He crouched, pulling out the bottom bin, then the next, until he reached a small cardboard box at the very back, almost hidden behind a set of paint cans. It was Ava's. He knew it instantly, not because it had her name on it, but because of the way it had been taped and retaped, the way it was tucked away like a secret. Inside were drawings, crayon-scribbled stories, a plastic bracelet made of green and yellow beads, A folded card that read, "To Daddy from Ava. I love you even when you're gone." Beneath it, another note, this one in Eleanor's handwriting. Mr. Pierce found this box while cleaning probably trash from her room. Thought you should decide what to do with it. Nathan's chest tightened, his hands clenched around the note until the paper crumpled. Trash. That's what she saw. He took the entire box to his study. One by one, he laid the drawings across his desk. Each one was like a breadcrumb leading back to moments Ava had tried to share, only to have them dismissed, hidden, or thrown away. And he had never known, never asked. He picked up the beaded bracelet and turned it over in his hand. The elastic had stretched, but the colors were still bright. It looked like something she'd made with hope in her heart. That night after Ava had gone to bed, Nathan stayed up sketching out a plan. The next morning he met with Simon. "I want every security feed reviewed, every blind spot, every disabled camera over the past 6 months." Simon raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot of data. Start with the dates." Eleanor was on duty, Nathan said. "Anytime we see a gap or tampering, I want to know. You think she did more than just yell?" "I don't know what she did," Nathan said grimly, "but I'm going to find out." 3 days later, Simon returned with a file. "We found something." Nathan opened the folder. Inside were time-stamped screenshots from hallway cameras. On multiple occasions during Eleanor's shifts, the feed went black for 20 to 30 minutes. Always around Ava's room, always just after school hours. "We can't recover what happened during those gaps," Simon said, "but the pattern is clear." She knew where the cameras were. She knew how to avoid them. Nathan stared at the images. His hands trembled. This wasn't just emotional abuse. It was strategic, calculated. Eleanor had isolated Ava in every way. She made it so no one would see. Nathan murmured. He leaned back, his eyes closed, letting the anger rise and then settle. Reacting wouldn't help Ava. Acting would. He picked up his phone and dialed. "Ken, it's Nathan. I want a child protection consultant. Not legal, psychological. Someone who specializes in long-term impact. Understood, sir." That evening he sat with Ava as she worked on a jigsaw puzzle in the den. "Can I ask you something?" he said gently. She nodded, eyes still on the puzzle. "Did Eleanor ever tell you not to tell me things Ava didn't answer right away?" Then she placed a piece down and said, "She said if I told I'd ruin your work, that you'd have to fire people and it would be my fault." Nathan exhaled slowly. "None of that is true. Nothing you could ever say would ruin anything. And if someone needs to be fired to keep you safe, I'd do it twice." Ava looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "Even if I break a rule." "There are no rules about hiding pain," he said. "There never should have been." She moved closer and leaned against him. Later that night, Nathan typed up a memo to his foundation's board. He wasn't just going to change the household. He was going to change the system. The next morning, he stood before the Pierce Foundation staff and announced a new initiative, Safe Voices, a nationwide grant supporting school counselors, child advocacy centers, and anonymous reporting systems for children in domestic care. "This is not just about my daughter," he said. "It's about every child who whispers their fears into a pillow, thinking no one will hear. I hear you now, and we will make sure others do too." There was silence in the room. Then quiet applause. Nathan didn't need standing ovations. He needed action. And now, finally, he was ready to lead not just as a CEO or a father, but as a man who had failed to listen and had learned how to start again. Ava sat cross-legged on the living room rug, her curls bouncing as she carefully threaded beads onto a string. The late morning sun spilled through the tall windows, casting golden light across the hardwood floor. Each bead was a different color, each one carefully chosen. Red for courage, blue for calm, yellow for Sundays, as she called them, days when she felt safe and warm. Nathan watched her from the armchair, a cup of coffee cooling in his hands. He hadn't told her about the foundation launch yet. Not the speech, not the media buzz, not the way the board had unanimously approved a multi-million-dollar pilot for Safe Voices. It wasn't time. This moment, this simple act of beading, mattered more than headlines. He stood and walked over, crouching beside her. "What are you making?" "A bracelet," she said, not looking up. "For Dr. Reed. She likes green." He smiled. "That's thoughtful." "I like talking to her," Ava said softly. "She doesn't make me feel like I have to explain everything all the time." Nathan nodded. "She's good at listening." Ava added a final bead and held the bracelet up to the light. "Do you think people can change, like really change?" It was a heavy question for such a small voice. Nathan sat beside her on the floor. "Yes. I think people can change when they want to, and when they know why they have to." She looked at him. "Did you change?" He didn't answer right away. "I think I'm still changing," he admitted. "Every time you trust me with something new, I change a little more." That seemed to satisfy her. She slid the bracelet off the string and into a small velvet pouch. "I want to give it to her tomorrow," she said. Nathan touched her hand. "Can I come with you?" Ava looked surprised. "You've never come to therapy with me." "I know," he said, "but maybe it's time I listened too." The next day, they arrived at Dr. Reed's office together. It wasn't a sterile clinic or a cold building. It was a small craftsman home with a garden out front and wind chimes hanging by the door. Inside the living room had been transformed into a warm, inviting space. Bookshelves filled with picture books, soft blankets, and two worn armchairs angled toward each other like old friends. Ava handed Dr. Reed the pouch. "I made you something." Dr. Reed's eyes softened as she opened it. "This is beautiful, Ava. Thank you." Nathan sat down across from them, hands folded. "I was hoping," he said, "that maybe I could join today, just to listen." Dr. Reed nodded. "Of course." For a few minutes, they just talked. About dreams and coloring, and how Ava's school had announced a spring play. Then Dr. Reed leaned forward. "Ava, is there anything you wish your dad knew, but you're not sure how to tell him?" Ava looked at her lap. "I wish..." She hesitated. "I wish he knew how many times I almost said something, but I thought I'd ruin everything. Like if I made him worry, then he'd leave." Nathan felt a punch to his gut. He forced his voice steady. "I don't want you to ever think your feelings are too heavy for me. That's my job to carry them when you need me to." Ava looked up at him. "I didn't want to be extra. I didn't want to be a problem." "You are never a problem," Nathan said. "Not one part of you is too much." She crawled into his lap without a word, pressing her forehead to his chest. After the session, Dr. Reed walked Nathan to the porch. "She's made remarkable progress," she said. "But the most important part of her healing is already happening. She believes you mean it when you say she's loved." "I do," Nathan said more than I ever knew I could. That evening back home, Nathan opened a drawer in his study and pulled out the old crumpled list he had found weeks before. The list of rules Ava had written. Rules of silence, fear, invisibility. He took a lighter from the desk. Outside on the stone patio beneath the stars, he held the paper in his hand and lit the corner. The flame curled through each rule one by one until the paper turned to ash. He scattered the remains into the wind. From the doorway, Ava watched arms crossed over her pajamas. "What was that?" she asked. "Just something that doesn't belong to us anymore?" She nodded and stepped outside, slipping her small hand into his. The wind was cool, but her fingers were warm, and in that stillness Nathan knew this wasn't just a new beginning for Ava. It was a new beginning for him, too. Not as a savior, not as a CEO, but as her father. And finally he was learning how to be one. Nathan pulled into the school parking lot 10 minutes before the final bell rang, the rain tapping softly on the windshield like a slow metronome. He hadn't picked Ava up mid-week in months, not because he didn't want to, but because the foundation and business consumed every spare hour. But things had changed. He had changed. Now he carved out time like it was sacred. Because it was. He stepped out of the car, umbrella in hand, and walked up to the covered sidewalk just as the double doors opened. A rush of laughter and backpacks and the squeak of sneakers filled the air. Children spilled out like confetti, some running into waiting arms, others skipping onto buses. And then he saw her. Ava spotted him instantly and lit up like a sunrise. "Daddy." She ran to him, her curls bouncing, her purple raincoat flapping behind her. He knelt and opened his arms. She crashed into his chest, damp and warm and full of joy. He lifted her easily. "Guess what she said," as he carried her toward the car. "Mrs. Adams picked me to read the announcements next week." Nathan buckled her in and grinned. "That's amazing, sweetie. You gonna tell the whole school what's for lunch, pizza and applesauce?" She laughed. "But I think I'll also say something cool at the end, like be kind or be quiet." He chuckled. "That's a pretty good motto." She nodded proudly. As they drove home, Ava hummed to the radio, tapping her fingers on the armrest. Nathan couldn't help but glance at her in the mirror, marveling at how much had shifted in just a few months. The shadows under her eyes had faded. Her shoulders no longer curled inward like she was trying to disappear. She was blooming. At dinner that night, Nathan brought up an idea that had been sitting quietly in the back of his mind. "Hey, kiddo," he said, swirling spaghetti onto her plate. "How would you feel about inviting some friends over next weekend? A little backyard get-together? Just fun games, maybe a movie night." Ava's eyes widened. "At our house?" "Of course. Maybe a couple of parents, too. We'll have lights in the trees. And snacks. And you can show them your tree swing." She hesitated. "Can I invite Chloe and Leo?" "You can invite anyone you want," Nathan said. A slow smile spread across her face. "Even Mrs. Chen from art class. Even Mrs. Chen." The idea took off from there. Ava grabbed paper and markers and started sketching invitations, each one with a cartoon version of their house and little stars above it. Nathan watched from the kitchen doorway, something warm blooming in his chest. This wasn't just a party. It was a declaration. Ava was ready to let people into her world again. The next few days were a whirlwind. Nathan hired a small catering team. Simon coordinated lighting. Gavin, the head of security, scoped out the entire yard and installed extra gate sensors just in case. Ava, meanwhile, buzzed with excitement, placing balloons in her favorite spots and selecting a playlist of songs she liked to sing in the car. Nathan let her lead. It wasn't about perfection. It was about her ownership, her joy. When Saturday finally arrived, the backyard glowed with soft fairy lights strung from the oaks. A projector was set up against the back wall. Beanbags and picnic blankets were scattered across the lawn. The scent of popcorn, mini hot dogs, and fresh lemonade floated in the warm spring air. Guests trickled in, kids in colorful hoodies, parents holding Tupperware teachers in denim jackets. The first time Ava introduced Nathan as my dad that evening, he caught the tiny catch in her throat, quickly covered by a smile. But it was there, and he understood why. Naming love out loud still felt like a risk sometimes. But each time she said it, the grip of the past loosened. Midway through the movie, Ava climbed into Nathan's lap on the large outdoor beanbag and leaned back against his chest. "You're not working tonight," she whispered. "Nope. You're not going anywhere tomorrow. Nowhere but pancakes and cartoons." She smiled without looking up. "This is the best night ever." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "Mine too." As the movie played on and the stars blinked above them, he looked around the yard at the laughter, the life, the light. This wasn't just healing. This was wholeness. And for the first time in a long time, Nathan Pierce knew exactly who he was. Not the CEO, not the donor, not the success story. He was Ava's father, and that was the most important title he would ever hold. The Sunday morning after the backyard gathering, sunlight poured through the linen curtains of the breakfast nook. Nathan stood by the stove, flipping pancakes, while Ava sat cross-legged on the counter, humming a made-up tune. Her hair was still a bit wild from sleep, and she wore his oversized Pierce Foundation hoodie, the sleeves covering her hands. "Do pancakes taste better on Sundays?" she asked, sniffing the air dramatically. "Only if you do the syrup dance," Nathan replied, sliding a golden brown pancake onto a plate. Ava giggled. "What's the syrup dance?" He gave her a playful shrug. "You'll have to make one up." She hopped off the counter and performed an impromptu shuffle across the tile floor, ending with jazz hands. "Ta-da! That was award-worthy," he said, handing her the plate. They ate together by the window, the sounds of birds outside mixing with the occasional clink of forks on plates. The peace was real deep earned. But by early afternoon, the quiet was interrupted by a call from Simon. "Nathan," he said, voice low. "You need to see something." Nathan stepped into his office and shut the door. Simon sent a link, and when Nathan clicked it, a video began playing. It was a podcast episode, small audience amateur production, but the title alone made his stomach drop the truth behind Nathan Pierce's adopted image. The screen showed a blurry photo of him and Ava walking hand in hand. The host, a sharp-voiced woman with a cynical grin, spoke over the image. "You know what's sad when billionaires adopt kids just for image points. PR. Sympathy. A little girl placed in a mansion she doesn't belong in, raised by a man who's never once spoken publicly about why he really took her in." Nathan closed the laptop. His jaw clenched not because of the insult to him, but the implication about Ava. That she was a prop, a decoration that her belonging could be questioned by someone who'd never met her. He called Simon back. "Do we know who's behind it?" "Name's Tessa Vance, online commentator, right-wing shock podcaster. She's looking for controversy to grow her numbers. Is it spreading?" "Not yet. A few fringe shares, but if it hits the right circles." Nathan looked out the window at the backyard. The swing still hung from the oak, swaying gently in the wind. "I'm not responding with lawyers. Not yet. Then what, I'm going to answer it my way." He hung up and walked into the kitchen where Ava was coloring on a placemat. "Sweetheart," he said gently, "would you want to help me tell our story about us?" She blinked. "Like in a book. No more like a short video, just us, talking about what makes our family real." She tilted her head. "Would I get to pick what I wear?" He smiled. "Absolutely." 2 days later, Nathan invited a small production team, trusted folks who'd filmed Pierce Foundation spots before. Nothing fancy. just a camera alight and a mic in their living room. Ava wore her "I'm the Boss" t-shirt, and Nathan wore jeans and his oldest flannel. They sat side by side on the couch. Ava swung her feet. The director asked softly, "What do you love most about each other?" Ava answered first. "I love that my dad always listens even when I talk too much, and he smells like coffee and safety." Nathan swallowed hard, then smiled. "I love that Ava reminds me who I am, and that she's braver than most people twice her size." The video was simple. No music, no graphics, just truth. They posted it quietly on the Pierce Foundation's page. By nightfall, it had 200,000 views. By morning, over 1 million. Comments poured in from all over the country. This made me cry. "Thank you for showing what love looks like. I'm watching from Ohio, and I just want to say this child is blessed, and so is her dad. As a foster mom, this gives me hope." One comment, though, stood out to Nathan. It read, "I live just 3 blocks from you. Didn't know your story. Now I do. If Ava ever wants to play with my daughter, we'd be honored." He showed it to Ava. She smiled. That afternoon, Ava and her new friend Olivia drew chalk art in the driveway. Rainbows, hearts, and stick figures holding hands. Nathan watched from the porch, coffee in hand, heart full. Dr. Reed visited that evening. "She's glowing," she said, watching Ava run inside for juice. "And you? How are you holding up?" Nathan sighed. "I expected backlash, but the love, it caught me off guard." Dr. Reed nodded. "That's the thing about truth. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just stands quietly and lets people see." Nathan looked out at the fading light. "I didn't adopt Ava to make a point," he said. "But maybe our story can be one. A story of what she asked." He smiled. "Of what it looks like when love shows up and stays." A week later, Nathan stood behind the velvet curtain of a small auditorium in Atlanta. It wasn't a press event or a corporate gala. It was a community gathering organized by a local youth center celebrating foster and adoptive families. The Pierce Foundation had quietly sponsored the event, but Nathan hadn't planned to speak. Until that morning, Ava had asked him with eyes too wise for her age, "Can you tell them what you told me, about why you chose me?" He'd nodded, though a small part of him still feared the weight of that moment. But now, as he peeked out at the crowd, parents, children, social workers, mentors, he felt something different than fear. He felt called. The host's voice echoed through the speakers. "Please welcome Nathan Pierce." Applause rose gently as he stepped out. No fanfare, no suit, just a man in a rolled-up dress shirt and jeans holding a folded piece of paper he didn't plan to read. "Hi," he began, his voice calm, but full. "I'm not here today as a businessman. I'm here as a father, a grateful one." He paused, scanning the crowd. "A few years ago, I made a decision that changed my life. I adopted a little girl, not because I wanted to be seen or to make a statement or to be anyone's hero. I did it because I met someone who made me realize my life was missing something I didn't even know I needed." A hush fell over the room. I wasn't prepared for how much I'd have to grow. I wasn't ready for how deeply I'd have to examine myself. But she, Ava, made me better. Day by day, mistake by mistake, laugh by laugh. He smiled gently. "She taught me that love isn't what you say. It's what you do when no one's watching. It's staying present. It's showing up. It's listening when your heart is too tired to speak. And sometimes it's holding a child's hand even when you're not sure if you're strong enough to carry their past." The room was silent. Many eyes misted over. "I didn't save her," Nathan said softly. "She saved me. And I know some of you know exactly what that feels like." When he stepped down, people approached with hugs, stories, thanks. A man in his 60s gripped Nathan's hand and whispered, "I raised 3 foster sons. Never heard anyone say it like that. Thank you." That night back at home, Ava waited up. She was curled on the couch blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Did you tell them?" she asked. "I did." She nodded like she already knew the answer. "Were you nervous, a little? Did you cry?" He laughed. "Almost. I knew it." They spent the rest of the evening eating popcorn on the couch and watching old cartoons. But sometime before midnight, Ava sat up and said, "Can I ask something big, always? If something ever happened to you, would I have to go somewhere else?" Nathan turned to her, fully heart-thudding. "No," he said firmly. "If anything ever happened to me, I've already made sure you'd stay with people who love you, people who know you, who understand everything you've been through. You'll never be alone, Ava. Not ever again." She looked relieved, though a small part of her still carried that old ache. "I just don't want to go back," she whispered to that feeling. "Like I'm invisible." "You're the most visible person in my life," he said. "And I promise to make sure you always feel seen." Later that week, a letter arrived at the Foundation's office. It was handwritten with no return address, but the penmanship was neat. "Mr. Pierce, I watched your video. I judged you before. I was wrong. My own son came out of foster care, and sometimes I forget how hard it must have been for him. Watching you and your daughter, it reminded me that love is learned, and that we're all still learning. Thank you." Nathan read it twice, then tucked it into his briefcase. The story he and Ava were building was reaching people. Quietly. Deeply. Not in headlines or boardrooms, but in kitchens and schools and living rooms like theirs. At Dr. Reed's next session, Ava brought her a drawing, a big heart with 2 stick figures inside. One tall, one small. "This is me and Daddy," she explained. "And the heart is our house." Dr. Reed smiled. "Looks like a very full heart." "It is," Ava said, "but there's room for more." "For more what?" "For people," Ava said. "We could help another kid, right?" Nathan, sitting in the corner, raised his eyebrows. She turned to him. "Maybe not right now, but someday. We could make our house bigger." He was quiet for a long moment, his chest full. "Yes," he said. "When we're ready, we'll make room." And in that instant, something unspoken passed between them, not just about adoption, but about growth, healing, and legacy. Ava had once been the child afraid to speak too loud. Now she was dreaming of giving someone else a voice, and that Nathan knew was the most powerful echo of love he'd ever heard. The spring sun shone gently across the Pierce property, casting long shadows from the magnolia trees that dotted the lawn. Nathan stood near the garden with a spade in his hand, soil on his jeans, and Ava by his side. Today, they were planting a tree. Not just any tree, a young oak they had chosen together the week before at a local nursery. Ava knelt beside the small hole they'd dug, clutching a tag that read, "Quercus alba white oak, symbol of strength and endurance." "Is this like the one you used to climb when you were a kid?" she asked. Nathan chuckled. "Not quite. Mine was a lot more crooked and had a swing that was probably a lawsuit waiting to happen." She grinned. "This one's going to be perfect." They placed the sapling into the earth together, Ava steadying it while Nathan filled in the soil. When they were done, they stood side by side, dirt on their hands, wind in their faces. "We'll watch it grow," Nathan said, "year by year, just like us." Ava looked up at him. "Will it still be here when I'm big, long after that? Maybe even when you have kids of your own?" She smiled, then fell quiet. "Do you think," she said softly, "that the people who hurt me before Do they ever feel sorry? Nathan's hands stilled. He wiped his palms on a towel before crouching to her level. I don't know, he said honestly. Some do, some don't. But what matters most is that you don't carry their shame. That belongs to them, not you. She nodded, blinking away a hint of tears. I used to think I was hard to love. Nathan pulled her into a hug. You are the easiest thing I've ever loved, Ava. They stayed there for a while, the breeze moving gently around them. Later that week, Nathan received a message from a longtime contact at the Department of Child and Family Services. They were hosting a roundtable summit focused on child trauma post-adoption support and community healing. They wanted Nathan not just to attend, but to help lead. He wasn't sure at first. It was one thing to speak at community events or release a heartfelt video. It was another to sit in a room of experts and decision-makers discussing policy and institutional failures. But then he thought of Ava's words. We could help another kid, right? He said yes. The summit was held in Washington, D.C., in a quiet conference room inside a historical building. Dozens of representatives were there, caseworkers, therapists, judges, and nonprofit leaders. The room was filled with the kind of silent tension that comes from years of burnout passion and bureaucracy. Nathan spoke last. He stood with a small photo of Ava in his hand. It wasn't one of her posed portraits. It was a candid shot, her drawing chalk hearts on the driveway sunlight in her curls, tongue sticking out in concentration. I didn't adopt Ava to change the system, he began. But after seeing how the system nearly broke her, I knew I had to speak up. He told them about Eleanor, about the hidden rules Ava had written for herself, about the therapy, the setbacks, the slow return of joy. There's no spreadsheet to measure the cost of silence, he said. But I promise you it's steep. Children don't just survive trauma. They carry it like an echo through every corner of their lives. And unless we meet them where they are with real empathy, they'll grow into adults still trying to unlearn fear. When he finished, the room was silent. Then slowly hands began to clap. Afterward, a judge approached him. We need more voices like yours in this space, she said. Not just data stories. Nathan smiled. I've got plenty more where that came from. Back home, Ava had prepared a surprise. When he opened the front door, she stood there holding a tray with 2 mugs of hot cocoa and a handmade sign that read, Welcome home, hero dad. He laughed and swept her into his arms. You're the real hero, he said. Nope, she replied, grinning. We're a team. That night, as they curled up for their bedtime reading, Ava asked, Do you think we'll always live in this house? Why, Nathan asked. She shrugged. Just wondering if we'll move someday, like maybe to a place where more kids need us. He looked down at her, his heart brimming. I think he said that wherever we go, we'll bring home with us. Because home isn't a place, it's the people in it. Ava snuggled closer. I want to bring it to someone else someday. You will, he whispered. You already have. And outside the window, under the night sky, the young oak they planted swayed gently in the wind, rooted steady, growing stronger by the day, just like them. It had been nearly a year since Ava had first stepped into Nathan Pierce's home, with nothing but a backpack and guarded eyes. Now the walls of their house echoed with laughter, shared secrets, and the unmistakable rhythm of belonging. But with growth came new chapters, and this particular morning began with a letter. Ava found it first. She had been checking the mailbox every day for the past week, convinced her pen pal from New Mexico would write back. Instead, tucked among the envelopes was a cream-colored letterhead, stamped with a government seal. She handed it to Nathan at the breakfast table, her expression curious. He opened it slowly, skimming the typed words. Then he paused. "It's from the State Child Welfare Board," he said. Ava's eyes widened. "Are we in trouble?" He laughed gently. "Not even close. The letter wasn't a warning. It was an invitation to testify at a legislative hearing in front of the state Senate. The goal: to advocate for more stringent oversight of private caregiving within the foster system. His story, they said, could make a difference. So could Ava's. Nathan looked across the table. "They want both of us to speak." Ava blinked. "Me?" He nodded. "Only if you want to. You don't have to say anything you're not ready to share. But I think people would listen to you, Ava. Really listen." She was quiet for a moment. Then, in her small but certain voice, she said, "Okay." The hearing was held 2 weeks later in the ornate chambers of the state capitol. Nathan wore a navy blazer. Ava wore a dress with yellow flowers and small sneakers. She insisted on bringing her lion plushie in her backpack for backup. They sat together at the long table in front of the microphone. The room was filled with lawmakers, reporters, and advocates. Cameras blinked silently from the back. Nathan spoke first, his voice calm and deliberate. He shared the timeline, how Ava had come into his life, how the system had failed her by allowing abuse to go unnoticed, and how love, consistency, and professional support had helped her begin to heal. He then placed a hand gently on Ava's shoulder. She leaned into the mic. "My name is Ava," she said. "I used to think I had to be quiet to be safe, but now I know that I'm allowed to speak, and that when people listen, things can change." Her voice trembled slightly, but she kept going. "I don't remember all the bad things, but I remember how it made me feel like I was small and didn't matter. But then I got a dad who told me that I do, and a doctor who helped me find my voice, and now I want other kids to know they're not broken." A senator leaned forward. "Thank you, Ava. That was incredibly brave." After the hearing, people approached them in the hallway. Social workers thanked them. Journalists asked for interviews. But Ava just wanted ice cream. They stopped at a small parlor on the way home. Chocolate for her, black coffee flavor for him. "Do you think they heard us?" she asked between spoonfuls. Nathan looked at her. "I think they'll remember everything you said." Back at home, things returned to their quiet rhythm. School, therapy, late-night stories. But something had shifted. Ava carried herself a little taller. Nathan noticed she started correcting people when they mispronounced her name. When she introduced herself to new classmates, she looked them in the eye. She wasn't just healing. She was owning her space. One evening, Dr. Reed visited for dinner. They sat around the table eating baked chicken and mashed potatoes when Ava brought up a topic none of them expected. "I think I want to write a book." Dr. Reed smiled. "What kind of book?" "About how I learned to be loud again," Ava said. "Not like yelling loud, just voice loud. The kind that makes people look at you and not through you." Nathan set down his fork. "That's a book I'd buy." Ava grinned. "You have to. You're gonna be in it." They all laughed, but the idea stayed. In the weeks that followed, Nathan helped her outline chapters, each one a snapshot of her journey, the quiet rules, the bracelet with the beads, the lion inside, the tree we planted. They wrote on weekends. Sometimes she dictated while he typed. Other times she curled up with a notebook and filled it with thoughts. In early summer, Nathan contacted a friend in publishing. "We don't want a bestseller," he said. "Just something honest. Something that reaches the right eyes." By mid-August, a small-run children's book titled Ava's Voice was printed and distributed through foster care networks and libraries. The illustrations were soft and colorful. Ava's words, simple but powerful, closed the final page. Even small voices make echoes. And sometimes those echoes build bridges. The first time she saw her book in print, Ava held it to her chest and whispered, "I'm real now." Nathan wrapped an arm around her. "You've always been real, Ava. Now the world gets to see it too." And they did. Not because of media campaigns or fame, but because of one girl's courage and the man who chose to walk beside her. Together they turned pain into purpose. And their story was far from over. Autumn arrived quietly, dressing the trees in hues of amber and gold. The air turned crisp, and the evenings came sooner, casting longer shadows across the Pierce home. Yet inside the house was warmer than ever. Ava had started 5th grade, and every day she came home with a new story about a science experiment gone wrong. A friend who loved the same graphic novel, or a substitute teacher with a thick Boston accent. Nathan listened to each tale with the attention of someone who knew these small moments were, in truth, the biggest ones. One evening, as they finished up dinner and cleared the plates together, Ava looked up at him with a familiar spark in her eyes. "Can we do Thanksgiving different this year?" she asked. "How do you mean?" Nathan replied, rinsing the last plate. "I want to invite people who don't have anywhere to go," she said, "like kids who are still waiting, or families who just started like us." He paused, heart swelling. "That's a beautiful idea." "I want them to feel what I felt last year," Ava continued. "That feeling like maybe everything is going to be okay." Nathan knelt and hugged her. "Then we'll make it happen." Word spread quickly through the local network of foster care organizations and community shelters. Nathan didn't want it to be a corporate-sponsored event. No banners, no logos, just long tables under tents, heaters to keep everyone warm, and enough food to remind people they mattered. On Thanksgiving Day, they opened their home, and not just the backyard, but the heart of it. Volunteers arrived early, helping prep turkeys and sides. Ava stood at the door with a clipboard welcoming each guest with a grin and a sticker that read, "Your family today." By mid-afternoon, the yard was filled with laughter, the clinking of utensils, and the gentle hum of shared stories. Children played tag near the oak tree she and Nathan had planted months ago. Some adults sat quietly, tears in their eyes, as they took in the scene. Some of them hadn't felt this kind of welcome in years. Nathan moved through the crowd, shaking hands, offering seconds, but always keeping Ava in his line of sight. She floated from table to table like a hostess twice her age, making sure everyone had what they needed. At one point, an older woman in a red scarf approached him. "You don't know me," she said softly. "My grandson is in foster care. I've been trying to get custody, but it's complicated. I almost didn't come today." Nathan listened. "But your girl Ava, she reminded me of him. Same eyes, same weight they carry. I just wanted to say thank you for reminding me there's still good people trying." Nathan placed a hand over his heart. "Thank you for telling me that." As the sun began to set, Ava climbed up onto the makeshift wooden stage they had set for music and announcements. She tapped the mic nervously, her lion plushie tucked under one arm. "Hi," she said. "I'm Ava." The crowd quieted. "I used to think Thanksgiving was just about food and pie and being polite." A few chuckles rippled through the audience. "But this year it feels different. It feels like this is what it's supposed to be. A big family, even if we don't all live together, even if we don't all know each other yet." She paused, swallowing. "I wanted to say that if you're here, it means someone sees you, someone wants you here, and I'm glad you came." Applause broke out gentle at first, then stronger. Ava stepped down, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. Nathan met her with a hug. You just changed somebody's day." "I hope so," she whispered. Later that evening, after the last table was cleared and the final guests had gone, Nathan and Ava stood under the oak tree wrapped in blankets. The leaves rustled softly above them. "Can we do this every year?" she asked. "We can do it as long as you want," he replied. "I want to remember," she said, "not just what happened to me, but what came after." "You will," he said, "because you're not just surviving anymore, Ava. You're leading." She leaned her head on his arm. "You think the tree will be really big next year? Bigger than both of us, I bet." They stood quietly for a while, watching the stars appear one by one. Inside on the kitchen counter sat a framed copy of Ava's Voice, her book now being used in classrooms across 3 states. Next to it was a note she had written on a sticky pad. "We used to be 2, now we're more." Nathan smiled every time he saw it because in the end, that was the truth of their journey. A girl who found her voice, a man who found his purpose, and a love that rippled outward, making room for others to believe that healing is possible, and that sometimes the family you build is the one that saves you. No matter how wealthy or powerful you are, nothing is more important than listening to and protecting the ones you love. A child's sense of safety and self-worth can't be secured with luxury. It takes presence, love, and timely action from a parent. Never stay silent in the face of injustice, especially when it happens within your own home.